Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about overcoming complex naturalization issues and citizenship and when to hire an attorney. Now, it's a lot of content, but we wanted to raise some issues because sometimes this comes up and people don't know what to do, where to go, and who can help handle their case. So I've been licensed for 14 years. I'm board certified in immigration, and I'm the managing attorney owner of Powers Law Group. So we're going to talk about some of the obstacles for naturalization, when it can be turned complex, other eligibility requirements, and things to consider that could be red flags or little hiccups or speed bumps along the way, and to let people know when things to consider when it might be good to have a consultation. So naturalization is the process where U.S. citizenship is granted to legal permanent residents. So they might say a pathway to citizenship, but this is basically an opportunity for an individual to go all the way to citizenship and be able to stay in the United States, later on petition, be it registered to vote. There's a lot of opportunities. There's security clearances. There's lots of things, and not have to update your address with USCIS and not fear of losing your residency because you were outside the country too long. So you have to meet the requirements. And generally, what those requirements are that you have to be at least 18 years old, legal permanent resident for at least 5 years. But for most categories, but if you, for all categories except for being married to a U.S. citizen, and there, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and living with them for the 3-year requirement, all things being equal, you can apply under the 3-year rule. You have to have a good moral character. Some things like not paying taxes or being behind on alimony or child support are considered having bad moral character and can prevent you from being approved, or having lied to the USCIS or to the government. Basic knowledge of US history. There's 100 questions that they're going to ask you. They're only going to ask 6. If you get those 6 out of the 10 right, then you're good. But there's 100 that they're going to pull from. So it's all free off the internet and you can study for that. So you need to have lived in the United States a certain amount of time, continuously lived in the United States for those 5 or 3 years, and physically present in the US the required amount of time, and then lived 3 months in the state of the district that you're claiming they have residence. So this is what the form looks like. That's just the first page. There's 20 pages, and they keep getting longer and longer. It can be confusing. When you file it online, it does seem to be a lot shorter when you file it online, and a little bit easier. So we have been trying to file it online to get faster interviews for our clients. So one thing to note, I love complex citizenship cases, but you want to know, is it possible that you're a citizen already? This is something that we should always screen out for. You might have acquired the citizenship, or you might have derived the citizenship. So you want to have some, if you, for example, if you have US citizen parents, if your grandparents, somebody petitioned for you when you were young, and when your parents became a citizen, you want to just double check this. There's been a couple of times in my lifetime I've told people they were a citizen and they had no idea. And in fact, prior attorneys had not noticed it, and it really changed the whole trajectory of them being able to petition for other family members because their children had aged out. So it is important to screen for this. You might have gotten the citizenship through parents, so it could be at birth or after birth, and you would have to meet those requirements after birth before the age of 18. And I'm just going to throw one idea out here that's really important. All these rules depend on almost always when you were born. And there's these charts, these citizenship charts, and you look to see were your parents married when you were born? Were they not married? Which parent was a citizen? Were both parents a citizen? Where were you born? Was anybody in the military? And what time? Sometimes it can get down to a time. Can you believe that? So it can be complex. So you might qualify to acquisition of citizenship, that all of the requirements have been met, and that you're, like, for example, you might have been passed on citizenship already, because, for example, let's say you are a certain age, you lived in physical custody with your parent in the United States, you're a green card holder, you're one of your or both of your parents, once they became a citizen and you were under 18, you might have become a citizen. But I'm going to speak in generalities, and I'm basically talking about this one right here, because it depends on your age and the year and things happen. So, for example, a child born outside of the United States automatically becomes a US citizen when all of these following things have been met on or after February 27, 2001. So that's important to note. This was 21 years ago, over 21 years ago. So at least one of the parents was became a citizen by birth or through naturalization, and the child is under 18. There, a child is a lawful permanent resident, and the child is residing in the legal physical custody of that U.S. citizen parent. So when we have cases where there's a green card parent and green card minor, we say, okay, let's get that parent a citizenship so that by the time they're a citizen, that child could automatically acquire the citizenship if all these conditions are met. So we try to save them money by getting those children automatic citizenship, and then the child only has to apply for a passport or a certificate of citizenship. Now, there's a couple of things to consider about assistive reproductive technology, where it can get a little complicated even more. And then a stepchild of a U.S. citizen who has not been adopted and does not have any other citizen parents does not qualify for citizenship under this provision. So it's really important to note. I even get confused. Sometimes step parents, stepchild things work, sometimes they don't. But what's important is that you always, that's what I do. I always just double check. Even though I've done this so long and I live in this space, I just double check things because I want to make sure this is so critical. You want to give the right information. So don't assume. Don't assume. That's basically the cardinal law of immigration. Another thing that we have a lot of experience with is midwife birth citizenship issues. For example, you're like, what is that? Well, it's basically when individuals were born to midwives along the US Texas border. I haven't seen this in California, but my practice in Texas. And generally, there were some midwives that had gotten in trouble, and they had basically came clean and basically said that some of these babies were born on the Mexico side, but they had lied and said they were born on the US side. So that put a lot of people's citizenship in question. Individuals who are now 40, 30, 50 are finding out when they try to apply for a passport or renew their passport, US passport, that their US citizenship is in question. Unfortunately, as time progresses, the midwife passes away, the parents pass away, witnesses pass away, and it's harder and harder to establish that they truly are a US citizen. There are ways to, you apply for a passport, you show that proof, and then if you are certain, you can always go to litigation, and go have a federal lawsuit, and then the burden shifts to the government to prove that you really aren't a citizen. So we do have cases like this. We love fighting the good fight. The client has to play detective. We work together as a team. We usually do these cases hourly because it really depends on the complexity and how much the situation of the case. So other things to consider is if there's a criminal matter. So you definitely want to have an immigration attorney do analysis of your crimes at the time you're wanting to file. Maybe at the time the crime happens, they can give you a heads up, but the case law changes. So you want to make sure this could affect you for good moral character issues, or it could even make you potentially removable. And those are, some of those things that you need to watch for. So if you have a criminal matter, you definitely want to have an immigration attorney who practices in that immigration space review it. So common issues for common good moral character challenges could be crimes of moral turpitude, fraudulent green card activity, violation of controlled substance, habitual drunkenness, gambling, shoplifting, prostitution, failing to pay taxes. Now, if you fail to pay, but you are on a payment plan, then that's fine. But, and then up here at the top, at any time, a conviction of murder, aggravated felony, that is a problem. Now, also with note, aggravated felony became into effect in around 1996, 97 with IRA. So, you have to look to see when that happened. There's more challenges: failing to support dependents, extramarital affair that destroyed an existing marriage. I've heard rumors that can actually impact the N400. I've never seen it in an existing client of mine. Smuggling aliens in the United States. I'm not registering for selective service if it's been some within the 5 years of you having to have done it. Other jail time and crimes can also kick you out of this. So proving good moral character would be totalitarian circumstances, but things like your ties here, paying taxes, education, employment history. Now you don't have to have a job to apply for this, but this could help combat or balance away the detrimental factors that you may have. Now you also want to take a look at whether you have any permanent bars to good moral character that could result into deportation. And this could be an automatic denial. So you want to analyze that. Now, this is where we get a little bit more into complexity. We have a lot of expat clients, and in that space, what we've seen is that people live abroad a lot, and so we have to do math and we have to do charts. The bottom line is, if all things being equal, you're eligible, you need to make sure that you've been in the United States more than half of the required amount of time you're supposed to be here. So like if it's 5 years, you need to be here more than half of 5 years. So if you do the math down here, 365 times 5 is 1825. Divided by 2, it's 1912 and a half. So you just need to be in the US at least 913 days. When you look behind your shoulder and you say, have I been in the US 913 days in the last 5 years? If the answer is yes, and everything else you're eligible for, then good to go. You need to make sure you qualify at the time you submit it and at the time of the interview. So if you were just on the cusp and then you go run around and live abroad a lot, and then you come back for an interview, well, you might have a problem. You probably will. I've seen people get denied for that. So you need to qualify at the time of filing and at the time of the adjudication. And the same numbers, just same concept, different numbers under the 3-year rule. So sometimes people are eligible under the 5 and the 3-year rule, but then they decide what's more advantageous for them to go with the whether to go with the 5 years for good moral character, what have you, or air travel, or the 3 years. So that affects travel and good moral character. So that's a way to think about it. Now, if you've ever had any of these other issues, like you want to talk about, you want to make sure that they ask so many questions about taxes. Have you failed to file? Have you filed as a non-resident? You owe taxes. So you want to make sure that you have the last few years of taxes to show good moral character. And if you had a payment plan, make sure that you have that up to date and you come with that to the interview. If you ever made a false claim to citizenship, that's a serious matter. If it happened before September, I believe it's 30th, or oh, here we go, September 26, 1996, then it could be an issue more for inadmissibility, misrepresentation. But anything after that date, around that time, is a permanent bar, and this could be extremely detrimental. You might have been waived it through some other manner. But what's important is to definitely look at this in the case law at the time and analyze whether this is going to permanently bar you from citizenship. Now, there's exceptions. Maybe your parents were citizens at birth, or maybe when you said this, you were under 18. Maybe your parents told you you're a citizen. But the thing is it's really more if one of your parents were citizens by birth, so then you might have thought you were a citizen, or the child, if you made it before you turned 18, or they were primary resident before 16, and the child reasonably believed. So there are some exceptions. I mean, I never want to have to be working on those exceptions, but there are some, and you definitely want to analyze those. So the reason why it matters to have a consultation and make sure you're eligible is that if for any reason you apply and and they deny it, you have an option. You could file the N336 and do like an appeal. Those have been taking quite a long time, but when you go to it, you just basically are trying to argue that there was a wrong decision and that you should be approved. But if they flat out deny it and then send you to immigration court to fight for your case, that's when it gets complex. And depending on what they put on your notice to appear and how they make the charge, you might have a couple of options. It might be 237A1H, like maybe there was some type of potential fraud and you could argue that you meet the qualification, and then that would put you whole if you're approved that. Or you might have to apply for a whole other form of relief and fight to get another green card. If you, there are ways to do federal litigation as well, due to long waits after an N400 might be pending for a long time. they're supposed to make a decision within 120 days after an N400 interview, and you can sue them if they take longer. But you really would want to make sure that you qualify. And if you apply on your own and you really aren't sure whether you should have applied or not, that basically first have a consult review, and then decide if you want to go on your own or have help. And then if you get in that type of situation where they're trying to deny or even send you to court, that's when you really, really need an experienced immigration attorney. And we've had several cases like that, well, many cases like that in different scenarios. So we can help guide you through that. It's important to know your local field office, who you're dealing with. And so other things that we say, we need to screen well, find a lot of evidence to back up your claim, review the application, make sure that you got the green card in the first place legitimately and there wasn't any problems. A lot of times people come to us after they've gotten their green card many years ago. We also need to check that you might need to do a Freedom of Information Act request, and we also need to check to see if the individual might already be a citizen. So we just kicking off September with this first complex naturalization issues. We'll do this again on Friday in Spanish. We also are going to do roadmap to successful national interest waiver petition, which hot topic. You don't need a jobs and you get a waiver to labor certification. We'll also talk about bond hearings and legal permanent residency, reentry, and how to preserve residency. So feel free to follow us all these different ways. Join our newsletter, join us on TikTok, watch us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and our upcoming webinars on different topics. We'll love to talk to you about any of these topics. And if you have a suggestion for us, let us know. Again, my name is Ruby Powers with Powers Law Group.